Welcome to the workbook exercises for Lesson 4 for Hebrew 1 and 2 online edition, Bright Old Testament 502-504. Today we'll be looking at parts 4 and part 7 of the workbook, working through these problems, or at least a few example problems. So let's go ahead and dive in. In section 1 of part 4, you are asked to identify the gender and the number of each of these nouns. Is it masculine or feminine? Is it plural or singular? I've skipped number 1 and just gone on to number 2. So number 2, shofatim. Is this masculine or feminine, singular or plural? The hirik yod mem ending should give away the fact that this is a masculine plural. What about number 3, shamayim? The mem at the end clues us into the fact that this is masculine. However, it is not masculine plural. This is not hirik yod mem. This is yod hirik mem. We have the accent on the penultimate syllable, the second to last syllable, ma-yim, which tells us that this is masculine dual, not masculine plural. What about number 4? There's no ending, so what is this? Masculine or feminine, singular or plural? The lack of an ending tells us that this is masculine singular. What about number 5? Comet's hey ending, susa. The comet's hey is a giveaway that this is feminine singular. What about number 6? Mishmeret. It may be tempting to think that because there's a tav that this is feminine plural. However, feminine plural is holam vav tav. Here we have segol tav. This is not feminine plural. This is feminine singular, mishmeret. In section 2 of part 4, you are asked to identify whether or not the word in question is feminine. So for number 2 and number 10, are these words feminine or are they masculine? I'll give you a moment to think about it. Number 2 is feminine. This is irregular. This is the plural of isha, nashim. So instead of woman, isha, we have nashim, women. So the feminine plural of woman. Number 10 is arim, which comes from ir, meaning city. Now we might look at this and think, oh, masculine plural. However, cities are always feminine. So this is a feminine plural as well. Cities, ideas, things having to do with the land or the earth, they are all considered feminine. So in this case, a city, feminine plural. In section 3 of part 4, you are asked to identify which of the nouns are segolets. Remember that a segolet takes its name from the fact that it usually has 2 segols, or at least the second vowel in the word will be a segol. Oftentimes the first one will be as well, but not always. Always, though, the accent will be on the first syllable. This is what allows it to maintain a short vowel in the first syllable, if that first vowel happens to be a segol or a patak. For instance, the word melech, king, has a segol in both the first and the second syllables. The first syllable maintains the short vowel, even though it's an open syllable, because it is accented. The second syllable maintains the segol because of the fact that it's a closed syllable. Often, the first syllable will have that short vowel, either a segol or a patak, but occasionally the first vowel will be long, which is also allowed even though it's an accented syllable. So for instance, the word for book, sefer, has a sere in the first syllable, but often it will be 2 short vowels. The first giveaway of a segolet is the fact that it has that accent in the first syllable. You should be able then to apply these rules to your workbook exercises to determine which ones are segolets. In Section 4, Part 4 of your workbook, you are asked to conjugate the given noun according to the designation found after the noun. For instance, number 13, you are asked to conjugate the word safer, meaning book, to the masculine plural conjugation. This will require adding the regular masculine plural ending of hirik yod mem. However, safer is a seglet. You notice the segol underneath the pay, and the accent is on the first syllable. However, when hirik yod mem is added to the end of the word, the accent actually shifts to the end of the word, to the hirik yod mem, leaving the samek now in the pro-pretonic position, 2 syllables ahead of the accent. This is a position that seire and comets, like a seire, do not like. This means that they will reduce down to a schwa. The technical name for this then is pro-pretonic vowel reduction, which is very common in long vowels in that first position, 2 positions before the accent syllable. This also means, though, that we have the resh used up with the hirik yod mem at the end of the word, leaving pei by itself. That would leave segol in an open syllable, which is not allowed, so the vowel lengthens. We would expect it to lengthen to a seire, but for whatever reason it lengthens to a comets. This is somewhat irregular, but you will notice that it is the same vowel pattern that takes place in number 13 through number 18, where regardless of what the vowel is in that second syllable, the syllable vowel lengthens to a comets. We have a similar pattern that takes place in section 5. These words are quite irregular, but you are still asked to conjugate the given noun. In numbers 4 through 6, you will notice that regardless of what the vowel is that is underneath the single syllable word, when it lengthens, it becomes a comets. This again is very irregular, but is something that often occurs in the text. So bat becomes banot, which makes sense. The patak lengthens to a comets. But in number 6, you will notice that ear becomes a reem, where instead of a hirik underneath the ayin, we actually have a comets. This means that we have to be aware of the fact that regardless of the vowel that we may have had at the beginning in the singular, we will have a comets in the plural. Again, irregular, but something to be aware of. In Part 7, Section 1 of your workbook, you are asked to conjugate the adjective according to the 4 possible forms of the adjective: masculine singular, masculine plural, feminine singular, feminine plural, remembering that an adjective will agree with the noun that it modifies in gender and in number. Adjectives are very consistent and very regular in their conjugation, which is nice. However, I want to highlight for you numbers 2 through 4 because we have a unique vowel pattern. When we add the suffix in the masculine plural, the feminine singular, and the feminine plural onto the end of the word, it takes the accent, which means that now the long vowel that is under the initial letter of the word in that first syllable is 2 syllables before the accent syllable, again in that pro-pretonic position. Comets, the vowel that is in kadosh, yashar, and hakam, does not like that. Again, number 4 is hakam, even though it comes from the word wisdom, hokmah, with a short o, comets hatuf. This is a full comets. Hakam, a long a. Since all 3 words have that long a in the first syllable, and that is a pro-pretonic syllable, which a long a hates, when we conjugate the adjective, we actually reduce that long a to a schwa. This is a very common vowel pattern and something to be familiar with, that pro-pretonic vowel reduction. This is actually the second time in these workbook exercises that we've seen it. But again, it is very common when you add endings, suffixes, object markers onto the end of a noun or a verb or any other word for that matter that leaves a long vowel, specifically a seire or a comets, in that pro-pretonic position, it will reduce to a schwa. Something to be aware of here as you conjugate these adjectives. I'm not working through any specific exercises from Part 7, Section 2 of your workbook because you should be able, based upon the lecture that you just watched and your lexicon and your book, to figure out the gender and number for each of these words. Remember that we are also placing the word in its singular form as the dictionary form, either the masculine singular, if there is such a thing, or the feminine singular. I do, however, for sections 3 and 4, want to remind you of two definitions, the definition of attributive and the definition of predicative, because you are asked to identify or to translate the words accordingly, whether or not they are in an attributive relationship or a predicative relationship. Remember that attributive means that they share the same definiteness if they are both definite or both indefinite. So, for instance, in number 1 of section 3, we have ha sefer, ha tov. Both of these have the definite article. You can see the hey plus the patak plus the dagesh forte in the first root letter of the word. This means that this is attributive, so we translate it as the good book. In number 2, however, you notice that we do not have the same definiteness. They may both be singular, so that we may have Tov Sefer. However, in this instance here, we have Tov Ha Sefer. The book is definite, but good is not. This is an indication that we have a predicative relationship, which means that Tov is the predicate or the second part of the clause. So we translate this with the implied is. The book is good. Not the good book, but the book is good. The same for number 3. We have reversed the position of the words, but we still do not have the same definiteness. So this still must be predicative. The book is good. You will use this same designation of predicative and attributive for both section 4 and section 3. Although in section 4 you are translating, you don't have to actually label it as attributive or predicative, but that will determine the pronunciation. You should be able, based upon this information, then to complete your workbook exercises. Don't forget to correct it using the answer guide, take a picture, and send it to me.